Hello, and thank you for joining me. So first up, we'll just check that our audio levels are okay, because we had a few issues with the audio last time. So we'll just check that everything's working okay, and then we'll get underway. So yes, thank you for joining in. And the plan for today is to go through all our photos from the other night. So I went out last night and did a live stream, and we finally got some pretty epic clouds. Okay, so not quite a storm, but we're getting there. We're getting to that time of year where we start to get some storms. So we had some pretty cool color in the sky. And this stream, it's going to be all about exposure blending. Okay, so I purposely did multiple exposures on a lot of these shots. So today we're going to do a lot of exposure blending. Okay, so the whole point of this channel is to show you live the photos, the editing process. Now, it's not going to be a full workflow because I want to try and keep this as simple and as quick as possible. Okay, so it's not going to be a full workflow. It's just to give you some ideas and to show you more so how many photos that we actually walk away with from a pretty typical photo shoot. Okay, so this is a photo shoot where I'm trying to capture movement in the water, and you do take a lot of shots. Okay, so as I go through the photos, you'll see the reason why I take lots of shots. Because we're basically using the water to create our image. Okay, so every image is going to be very different, even though we might have similar compositions. So let me just check who's in here. Knots on the Bay, of course. Jack's in here, Cool JB, Ultimate. How are you all? Thank you for joining. And yeah, it was a good night last night. It was nice to get out and have some cloud. It did kind of fizzle out as the night went on. But yeah, look, it was good. It was a bit of a change from our clear skies. So I shouldn't complain about the weather. We've had very clear skies lately and nice weather. But yeah, it looks like we've got some cloud on the way. All right, now I'm not going to talk too much. Let's just get straight into it and start going through the photos. Okay, so that's why you're here, to see my raw files. Okay, and you're going to see, well, look, there's 113, so I'm not going to go through every single raw file. I've already had a quick look at them and I've picked out a few that I want to work on. But just to give you an idea of sort of the whole thought process behind what I was doing was to capture movement in the water and to have our sky as well. Okay, so as per normal, I'm going to quickly apply my basic Seascape preset. Okay, so I'm just going to click Seascape, Control A, Sync, and that's basically just going to bring down our highlights and whites and lift our shadows and blacks, just so we can get a better idea of what we're dealing with. I would have been in my element. The waves were so nice. Yeah, they were. It was really nice out there. It was good to have some waves. So for those who don't know Hervey Bay, we don't normally get a lot of waves. We're kind of protected from Fraser Island. So it's fairly calm out there most of the time, but yeah, it was nice to have a few waves roll through. Okay, now the first thing you might notice is a lot of these appear overexposed, and that's because I did deliberately overexpose them. Well, not overexpose them, but I exposed for our foreground. Okay, so if I just reset that back to the original raw file and click my highlight warning. Okay, so we've blown the sky out, which I wasn't too concerned with because we do multiple exposures. So we've got an exposure for our sky. This was all about capturing as much of this shadow detail and more importantly, having that ½ a second shutter speed to get movement in the water. Okay, so even though the sky's blown out, the whole purpose of this was to get two shots, one from a foreground and then the sky as well. When you're shooting into the sun, it's near impossible to expose everything in one shot. Okay, so as you'll see from this one, if we expose for our highlights, we lose a lot of detail in the shadows, okay, and our shutter speed is going to speed up a bit as well. Now, yes, you can use filters to kind of, you know, even that out, but yeah, look, this is all done without a filter. I want to try and keep things as simple as possible. G'day, Leslie, how are you? Thank you for joining in. You would have loved it out there with all those waves. It was nice. It was nice to see some waves. Okay, so yeah, I have deliberately not underexposed, but I've exposed for my foreground, but more importantly, having that ½ a second shutter speed without boosting my f-stop too high. So f14 is kind of roughly as high as I want to go to get everything nice and sharp. But yeah, anyway, I won't explain it too much. I'll show you, and then it'll start to make sense once we start to edit the photos. So first thing I'm going to do is just bring down my exposure by about 1 stop to bring it back to roughly where it should be. And the first thing I'm noticing, a lot of my shots were very blue. Now, I did shoot these in auto white balance, but as you can see, even if we go to daylight, everything's very blue. So it's just one of those cases where, you know, you've got a blue sky with an orange sunset. So yeah, the camera can get a bit confused with white balance. So we're going to manually change our white balance for every shot. Okay, and I think I need to add a bit. It's got a slight tint of green. I'm just going to add a bit of magenta to it. And I'm just going to warm it up a little bit as well, because the sun, it was very golden. So somewhere about there. And then what I want to do now is I press Control and A again and press Sync. And then I'm going to check None and just select the white balance. So now it's only going to sync the white balance to every photo. Okay, so it's keeping my original Seascape preset, and now I'm just changing my white balance. So now we've got the same white balance through every photo. Okay, so that's one of the great things about Lightroom. The sync function is brilliant. G'day Claudia, how are you? Brilliant lesson you enjoyed last night. That's good. Yeah, look, it was fun. It was fun. I love doing the live streams. It's good just to, you know, bring people along to more so just watch the sunset and show off Hervey Bay. It's a beautiful place that we live in, and we're very lucky. Okay, so now that I've synced up my white balance, what I'm going to do, all these shots that are exposed for my foreground, I'm just going to select all of them, and just so I can sort of get a better idea of what I'm dealing with, just gonna, all those ones that are just slightly, so once we get down a little bit further, you know, everything starts to even out because the sky wasn't quite so bright. Once that sun sort of got in behind the clouds, our exposure did start to even out a little bit. Okay, so somewhere about there. And again, I'm going to press Sync, and this time I'm going to check None and just check the exposure. So then it's only going to change the exposure on those ones that I've selected. Okay, so this will give me an idea of what I'm dealing with. So now when I go through my photos, I'm not editing, so to speak. I'm just sort of getting an idea of what I'm dealing with. Okay, so how's the audio too? Does the audio sound better? I've been playing around with these microphones and I think I've got it sorted that the audio should be a lot better. I'm not sure what happened with that last live stream from home. Yeah, Claudia, I'm loving learning. Yeah, look, learning is fun, and I'm still learning. Like, you're always learning, and that's the great thing about photography. I think that the day you think you know everything is the day you probably should give up and go and find something else to do, because there's always something new to learn. Especially, you know, cameras are coming out with all these new functions, and yeah, like just learning cameras in itself is a whole new ball game. Sounds good. Sounds good and loud. Okay, is it not too loud, is it? As long as it's not too loud, that's good. It's going to be a lot louder than last time. I have cranked up the volume of my microphone a little bit. So, yeah, good. Okay, I'd rather be too loud than too soft. Then I don't have to talk as loud. I can just start talking normally. All right, so yeah, like I said, there's always something to learn, okay? If you sort of, yeah, if you get to that stage where you think you know everything, might be time to go and learn something else. So what I'm going to do is sort of just go through all my images and pick out the ones that I like, and that's what I've done. I've gone through, I've already given them a 5-star for the ones that I've liked. So rather than bore you by going through every single photo, I'm just going to show you the first few, and then we'll get into the editing side of it. G'day Pam, how are you? Thank you for joining in. Okay, so this is what we were going for. This is what I call some nice water movement, okay? And that all comes down to that 1/2 second exposure. And this is a personal preference thing. This is how I like my water, okay? It's, you know, as I've said before with photography, it's all about what you like, okay? Do what you enjoy. Some people like the really fast shutter speeds and freeze the movement of the water a bit more like this. Personally, I love water movement, okay? And it makes every shot completely different. So for all these first few, they were all the exact same exposure, same composition, but look how different each shot is just from movement in the water. Okay, so it makes for some very interesting photos. Okay, I love playing with water, having those rocks there just as our solid foreground just to anchor the shot, and then having the movement of the water going through the shot. Okay, so yeah, I sort of explained it a bit more in the live stream, but yeah, that was the whole process. Get water as it's coming in, get water as it's flowing out. I've got some better examples as we get down further of the water flowing out. And then I take an exposure from my sky. Okay, so just keeping my highlights under control, and getting all that detail. Like, there's so much detail in the sky that you almost need two exposures, because some of these highlights in the sky were very bright. So by just not so much underexposing, but just make sure we don't clip our highlights. Okay, I've got plenty of videos on the channel about exposure blending and why, when, and all of that sort of thing. So I won't cover it too much in this one. Let's just get into the editing and go through these photos. And we'll do a bit of a review of the composition while we're at it. So the first one, look, it's a pretty safe composition. It's all about the water movement. Okay. So, you know, we've got almost a leading line heading towards the sunset. There's not a lot happening in the right-hand side of the frame. So, look, these, as far as I'm concerned, they're not the best shots I've ever taken. Okay, there's a few elements in there that I'm not 100% happy with. But a lot of it's uncontrollable. Okay, we can't put the sky where we want it, and if we kind of recompose, then we're shooting up over the rocks to the left. So it's sort of one of those things, you got to work with what you've got. Okay, so, and like I said, like, not every shot is great, but look, I've got shots like this that I'm really happy with. Okay, so I've got all this movement, get that water flow effect, and that's kind of what I was going for. It was all about getting this water flow over the rocks, almost like creating a waterfall, because we don't have any waterfalls in Hervey Bay, and it would be nice to have some. So yeah, playing with some waves, it was nice. So as you can see, exact same composition, but just, yeah, getting the water at different moments. Okay, so there's a really good one with lots of water. Okay, there's another one, and as you can see, like, although it's the same composition, they're all completely different shots. Okay, so yeah, when you're working with water, rocks, and a sunset, I do recommend taking lots of images, okay, because, you know, you might take 2 or 3, but then you might miss one like this, or you might miss one like this. So you're better off having too many than not enough. Okay, if you came back and you had a heap like this with no water, you'd sort of wish you had have taken a few more shots. Okay, so again, I'm not going to go through every photo. There's too many, and they are all kind of similar. Okay, there's not a lot of variation. But yeah, that's just, you know, I love that movement in the water. Okay, and again, every now and then, once I know I've got a good shot, once I've sort of captured my foreground, then I'll expose for the sky just to get all that highlight detail. Okay, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to blend a few of these images together today. And look, there's lots of photos in here that I do like, but just for the sake of this video, so we don't sort of drag on for too long, I've just gone through and picked a few out. Okay, so I've just picked a few that we're going to work on, and I'm going to show you how we go about exposure blending. Okay, that's what it's going to be all about today. And we're going to create some moody photos, because I'm in the original live stream, I did call it a moody sunset. Now, it probably wasn't as moody as I was hoping. It was really stormy looking when we got there, and it just kind of almost fizzled out as the night went on. But yeah, look, I'm not going to go through every photo. Like I said, I've narrowed it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my filters, and I'm just going to turn on my rated, because I've already rated a few, and we've got 19. We've got almost 20 photos that I was reasonably happy with. Okay, there's more than I'm happy with, but as far as the editing process goes, I've picked out a few that I'm going to be able to give you some really cool ideas with them. Okay, so remember, this isn't going to be a full workflow. For starters, when it comes to a full workflow, I sit on my images overnight. So I'll do a quick edit the first day, and then I'll give it a rest, because once you start looking at something for so long, your eyes get used to it. And then if you come back to it in another day or 2 days and look at it with fresh eyes, you're always going to notice something different about it, whether it's a color balance or something just not quite right. So I generally give my images a nice quick edit to start with, get them to roughly where I want them, and then revisit them a little bit later. So that's what I'm going to do now. Give them a quick edit, get them to a place where I'm reasonably happy with them, and just sort of give you a few ideas of how to blend images together. And I'm also going to explain a little bit about why I bring down my whites and lift my blacks. Okay, so I know a lot of people like to bring up their white point, bring down their black point to create a black point and a white point. I do things a bit differently. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I get my white point and black point once we start to edit. All right, so yeah, again, thank you everyone who has joined in. So something a little bit different. Okay, I'll try not to waffle on too much. I've already waffled. How long have we been going for? Too long. All right, let's start our first edit. So this one here, this is going to be a very straightforward. We've got our foreground and we've got our background. Now the HDR function in here, I did a video on the HDR function. These sort of images it doesn't work on. Okay, we have too much movement in the water, and the way it's going to work, it's going to try and pick out all it's going to try and match our two exposures. So in other words, it might take away some of this white in the water, thinking that the white shouldn't be that bright, and it might start to blend in some of this. So the HDR function in Lightroom, really good for when you don't have any movement. An image like this, it doesn't work very well. Okay, so this is where we need to exposure blend. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the two images that I want to bring into Photoshop, right click, and edit in. And there's two ways we can do it. We can either open it as layers, or we can just bring them both in separately. In this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to open them as layers in Photoshop, because that's what we're going to be working with. We're going to be working with layers. And I know Ultimate sort of mentioned a video on layers, which I am working on a video on layers at the moment. So hello Simone, thank you for joining in. Okay, so now as you can see, it's opened these two photos as one, okay, and it's stacked the two layers on top of each other. Okay, now if we want to change it, we can just click and drag. And the way layers work, if you think of layers as photos, and what you do if you have one photo on the table and then you put another photo on top, you're only going to see the photo that's sitting on top. Okay, if you want to look at the photo that's underneath, you can click this eyeball and that'll show you the photo that's underneath. So this is the bottom image that we're looking at now. And if we click that eyeball on the top, it shows us the photo that's on top. Okay, hello Plyush, hello. Joining for the first time, delighted to have someone streams while editing. Yes, well, it's one of those things that I haven't seen anyone else do it. So I thought, well, someone needs to, and I'm your man. I'm the one that's going to start this live streaming. Okay, I'll try not to talk too much. I have a habit of just waffling on and talking a bit too much. So yeah, layers, and thank you for joining in. Layers, that's how layers work. So think of it as a stack of photos. You've got one photo on your desk and then you put another photo on top, and that's how these work. So whatever's on the bottom is your bottom photo, and then the next one is the one on top. Okay, so essentially what we want to do is, the easy way to think of layer masking, because that's probably one of the first things you'll learn in Photoshop, is layer masking. What we want to do is we want to erase bits of this top image to reveal what's underneath. Okay, so underneath we don't want all this foreground, we just want the sky. Okay, and this one we want to keep that foreground, we want to erase that sky. So what we do is we create a layer mask, which is this little square down here with the black dot in it. And the way I like to teach layer masking is black blacks out. Okay, none of this white reveals and black conceals. I don't like that way of thinking. Okay, black blacks out. It's as simple as that. Because as a perfect example, the people that like to say that the black conceals, I'm going to use black to reveal what's underneath. Okay, so that's why, yeah, get that white reveals and black conceals out of your head. Black blacks out. So whatever layer that mask is attached to, if you paint black on that layer, it's blacking out that top layer to reveal what's underneath. Okay, so that's the way I think of it. And it made my life a lot easier. Back when I was trying to learn layer masking, I used to always hear this white reveals and black conceals, and I used to think, well, I'm painting white, why isn't it revealing what's underneath? So yeah, it deals with what layer you've attached it to. Okay, so it does make sense. Like, I'm not saying it's wrong. It definitely makes sense. But when you first start out, just think blacks out. Okay, whatever layer that mask is attached to, a black brush will black out the bits that you don't want. Okay, so that's the easy way. And just with a black brush, I'm just blacking out the top part of the sky. And now we've blended the two images together. Okay, so we've got the sky that's perfectly exposed, and then we've got this foreground underneath. That's how simple it is to exposure blend two images. Okay, this is one of those cases. This is the easiest blend you can get because we've got a nice straight horizon. I'll deal with other exposure blends as we get along. It's great to watch these lives every week. I learn so much. Yeah, thanks Ultimate. And yeah, look, a lot of people are learning because, look, I like to keep things simple, and that's the whole point of this channel, is simple and effective. And one thing I don't like is just having stacks of layers. Okay, I get confused easy once you got too many layers, so I like to keep things simple. And I don't like to over edit my photos. I like to try and keep it as simple and as realistic as possible. Okay, so in this case, all I'm doing is just blending one sky with a foreground. Okay, so very easy. Okay, so thank you. You're going to be here every week. That's good. Hello, Jan. Hello from Darwin. Welcome. Nice to have some people not from Hervey Bay in tonight. So that's good. Finally starting to get a few new faces in here. So yeah, thank you for joining. And like I said, this isn't going to be full workflows. It's very simple and effective. That's what I do, simple and effective. And more so, I'm doing it live, just, you know, because when they're sort of pre-planned and scripted, it makes everything look a lot easier. When you see it live, I'm going to try and make it look really easy. Okay, so that's our first blend. Okay, just with a simple layer mask using that black brush, we've blacked out the overexposed bit that we don't want. To reveal what's underneath. And the good thing with a mask, let's just say if we just accidentally go too far with our black brush, if we press X on the keyboard, that'll switch to a white brush, and then it just paints it back in. Okay, so then it paints back in whatever we've blacked out. Okay, and then switch back to the black brush. Okay, and if you want to get in nice and tight on that horizon. Okay, so that's a very simple, easy exposure blend. Okay, and then I'm just going to go up to Layer and Flatten Image, and then hit File and Save. Okay, and that's going to save that blend in Lightroom. So there's our foreground exposure, there's our sky exposure, and there's our blended. So now what I can do with these two, if I just press 0 for these two, that'll get rid of them from there. And now I've just got my one basically starting point, because I haven't done anything to it yet. Okay, all I've done is blend the two images together to create a starting point, so then we can start to edit. Okay, so I'll move on to the next one because I've got some in here that yeah, this is the one. Okay, so this one, I'm going to show you exactly how cool exposure blending can be. So what I've got 3 images that I'm going to blend to. Well, I've got 4 actually, because I'm going to blend my 3 foreground images and then the sky. Now to blend these, I did notice I did change my shutter speed for some reason here. And that's what you're going to see every now and then. I'll sort of do things and you think, why did he do that? Sometimes I don't even know why I did it. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is get these 3 exposures similar. Okay, now shooting on a tripod makes blending very easy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the first one, select the last one, and then again we're going to edit in Photoshop and open as layers. So then it's going to stack them all on top of each other for us. Okay, so again, I'll try and get through this quickly. If you have any questions or if I'm going too fast, just slow me down or pull me up. But it's one of those things, if you sort of watch the video later and slow it down, watch where I'm clicking and what I'm doing, and then it might start to make a little bit more sense. And also keep in mind, everything I do here, I will break it down into individual videos. Okay, I've got lots of plans coming up, and Ultimate's given me a list of things that she'd like to see. So layers, exposure, blending. Can't remember everything that was on the list, but yeah, there's a good list there of things that she'd like to see. And that's what I'd like to hear. If you've got anything you want to know about, chuck it in the comments, and I will try and get around to it and show you simple and effective. Okay, there's plenty of people out there that go really in depth with Photoshop, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not the person that's going to go in depth too much with Photoshop. I'm here for the beginners, pretty much the beginners and the intermediate, and trying to keep it simple. Okay. Yeah, it is a big list. Thank you. A big list is a good list. Okay, because I do run out of ideas sometimes. I don't want to just keep doing the same thing over. Although that's what YouTube wants. YouTube wants you to keep doing the same thing over and over. And I don't want to pigeonhole into something just yet. So that's why I'm sort of going with the live streams. No one else is doing it. It's something different. And yeah, I'll get into a bit more of a flow once I sort of work out what I'm doing. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to blend 3 images. Okay, so again, with our photo stack, this is our bottom photo. This one here, if we just press the eyeball, we see that one, eyeball, and then we see that one. So we've got all these stacked on top of each other. And then our sky exposure, I'll save that till last. So what I'm going to do is start with my bottom image. And there was a couple of things in this image that I did like. And number one was this water down in the bottom right-hand corner. So I want to keep all that. Okay, in this image here, I love the water flow in the middle of the image and this wave up here. And this one, I like what's going on down here and around the rocks. So what we're going to do is take the best part of all 3 and combine them into one. So starting with the bottom image, okay, so just looking at that bottom image, this is the part that I want down here. So if I click on this layer, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a layer mask, but I'm going to, actually no, I'll just do it, just a normal layer mask. Once you hit a layer, I'll try and keep it simple. So I was going to go a bit too far ahead then. Just by creating a layer mask, it will automatically by default create a white layer mask. Okay, so now that we've got a white layer mask there, we're going to black out the bits that we don't want just with a brush tool. If we right click on the brush, I turn my hardness down to 0. Okay, so that'll make a nice soft brush. Okay, if you have your hardness up to, I'll show you a quick example. So see that if I start painting, it's a very harsh brush. If I put my softness, or sorry, the hardness down to 0, it makes for a nice soft brush. And that's what we want for blending. Okay, you want a nice soft brush. Okay, so with that layer mask selected, all I'm doing is using that black brush to black out the bits that I don't want. Okay, and start to reveal what's underneath. Okay, so again, I'm using my black brush to reveal. So yeah, get that white reveals and black conceals out of your head. Black brush blacks out. I'm blacking out the bits that I don't want and keeping everything else. Okay, and then we go to the next layer. Okay, now with this one, I sort of want, what I'm going to do is just looking at the image. In this one, I kind of want all of this part up here and over this rock in the middle. So what I'm going to do, and yeah, we're going to keep all that. So again, I'm going to create another layer mask. And again, with the black brush, I'm going to black out the bits that I don't want. So knowing that I really just want this middle bit, I'm going to use my black brush, and that's going to reveal everything that we've done underneath. Okay, and even in this little bit in the middle, I love that water flow there. Okay, and at any time, if you ever get lost, if you just switch back to your white brush, you can paint it back. So just by switching between black and white, you can paint in or paint out. Okay, and then you just find the bits that you want. So if we have a look at where we started, there's where we started. We've added this flow in the middle and the wave up there, and then we've added this flow here. Okay, and that's how easy it is to mask in and mask out. And exposure blend, we're blending several different exposures and taking all the best bits out of each exposure. Okay, so rather than just being stuck with this, and this is why I love shooting water movement, because you get so many different textures, so many different effects that sometimes you'll find that you'll like a certain part, but you won't like the rest. So by exposure blending, we can take all the parts that we like and put them all together. Okay, so just by looking at that, there's a little bit down here. I kind of like this water here. So again, going to click on that mask, and with a black brush, it's going to black it out. And because it's a nice soft brush, it makes the blend nice and smooth. Okay, and then finally, we're going to go up to our top layer. And again, we're just going to click that mask tool. And this time, again, black brush, and we're going to black out the bits we don't want. So we don't want all this foreground. So black brush and just black out that. Another thing we can do is use our gradient filter. Okay, and the gradient filter, by default, it should be on black and white. So wherever you start, so click and then drag, and it'll start as black and transition to white. So we're starting at black, we're transitioning to white, and then it'll make it a slightly smoother blend. Okay, and then if we get like a small gradient, it makes it a lot tighter blend. Okay, so it's just a matter of sort of playing with it, getting it roughly where you want it. Usually a larger transition looks neater. And that's it. Now we've just blended 4 images together. We've got that epic sky that we wanted, and we've got all this foreground interest. And at any time, like let's just say up in this corner, okay, those rocks are getting a bit too dark. If we just grab our white brush, because remember, white's going to undo what we've done. Grab our white brush, black brush. We're going to black out those bits that we don't want, and that's a good thing with layer masks. If you accidentally do something, just change brushes. Okay, so now, and we might want to get more water. Okay, I won't go in depth. Again, this is one of those things that you could spend as much time or as little as you like to get that blend as nice as possible. Okay, so that's a very simple exposure blend. Well, not a simple exposure blend, it's quite a complex exposure blend, but it is easy to do just with layer masks. And then once we've got it roughly where we want it, we're just going to hit layer, flatten image. And again, if we just hit save, okay, we go back to Lightroom. Where's Lightroom? Here. And now it's saved that blend. Okay, so again, we can get rid of all of these now. We've used that one, we've used that one, we've done that one. That's our blended image. Okay, we can put a 0 on that one, and then we're on to our next sequence. Okay, so already we've blended 2 images, and again, it's just a starting point at this stage. I'm going to do more, so stick with me. We might even do some dodging and burning, because I've got a special way of dodging and burning that I like to use. Yeah, so again, these are not a full workflow, just kind of getting our images blended. Now this one here, again, I love all this water in the foreground, the water crashing over the rocks, the water, that's what I like. That's, and that's why go out and play around with shutter speeds. Go out, try different shutter speeds and find out what you like. Okay, yeah, that's the good thing about photography. It's all about experimenting, find out what you like, and this is what I like. I love the water movement. Love that epic sky. Now this one here, okay, so here's another blend where I love everything about this except for sort of in the middle down the bottom where I like this more. So again, what I'm going to try and get those 2 exposures similar. I'll just lift that one up, and that's the key to exposure blending. Get your exposures looking similar, and then your blend will look a lot neater. So again, edit in Photoshop as layers. Can't wait to try this. You make it look so simple. You know what? It is simple once you get your head around the blacks out. So once you've created a layer mask, use that black brush to black out the bits you don't want to reveal what's underneath. It does take a little bit of, sort of understanding the layers and how they kind of stack on top of each other. But it's fun, okay, and that's another reason I like to do this sort of thing, because I love the editing side. I like having a bit of fun with it and playing around. Okay, and as long as you're shooting on a tripod, like you got to remember these are all shot on a tripod, so nothing's moving. If you're doing it handheld, you can align your images. So up in here, there's like an auto align layers. So if you're doing it handheld, I might save that for another video actually. So yeah, again with this one, okay, if we just click that eyeball and see what's underneath, so this is all the bit that I want from the other image. So on that top layer, I'm going to, again, use that black brush and black out the bits that I don't want to reveal what's underneath. Okay, now I'm getting that nice water flow down there. Okay. And now we've blended those two together. Okay, and then I can go back to Lightroom, grab that sky exposure. Let's grab that one, edit in Photoshop. Is it possible to make the yellow a tiny bit stronger? Sure is, and we'll do that soon. We'll I'll show you how to. We're going to go ham on this sky, and it was I named the original live stream Moody Sunset. So that's what we're going to do in this stream. We're going to create moody sunsets. Okay, when you've got like big, deep, thick clouds and lots of orange in the sky, we're going to create moody. So yes, I am going to definitely add a little bit more yellow. We'll do some color balancing as well while we're here. So for starters, I just want to get my images blended, get them sort of roughly where I want them, and then we can start editing them, so to speak. Because, you know, like at this stage, all I've really done is bring down my highlights and whites and lifted my blacks and shadows. That's it. I haven't done any color grading, haven't even touched my vibrance. I very rarely touch vibrance or saturation. I find that, yeah, you'll see as we sort of get going, I'll start to introduce color by using masks and different things. So what we'll do is create another layer mask. And this is, you know, for people starting out, keep repeating the same process over and over, and then it'll sink in. Okay, so, you know, I will purposely go out and shoot a heap of exposures and just spend an hour or two blending them all together until it gets to the stage where it's just habit. Like you don't have to think about it. You'll just sort of, you'll know how it works. So next time you're out, put your camera on a tripod, take an exposure for your sky, an exposure for your foreground, and just practice the blending side, because it's fun and you just get so much more detail out of your photos. Okay, rather than trying to capture everything in one shot. Capture. So these are unbalanced. That foreground is very, very light. Okay, so and look, we'll balance that out a little bit later. What I can even do, now that I've got layers, I can just kind of bring down the opacity of that top layer and lighten up the sky a little bit, which is what we might do with this one, just to balance the image out a bit more. Okay, I'm kind of rushing through it a little bit at the moment, just so we don't go for too long. But yeah, when we blend images, we do want to try and get all our exposures as close as possible. Okay, so, you know, for example, with these two, I probably should have taken them down just a little bit more, brightened up that sky a little bit more, and then blended them. So I'm just kind of rushing through just so we can start editing the photos. All right, so that'll do for that one. Let's go layer flat image. And again, I'm just going to press save. I'm just going to keep these in Photoshop for now, so then I don't have to keep going backwards and forwards. And then where are we up to next? Okay, so that's that. We can just press a 0, that'll disappear. Press a 0 and that'll disappear. That's our sky exposure. This one here, look, I might skip over this one, but this is another one where we've got lots of different components that I would like to blend together. So for example, this like water down the bottom, I love the flow over the rock there. This one here, I like this wave rolling in the background. Okay, the water crashing over this rock. So, and that's a good thing with exposure blending. We can pick out all the bits that we want. Rather than just settle on one image, we can kind of pick and choose which parts we want and blend them all together. So what I might do, in this case, I am just going to pick one. I'm going to pick one, and I think I'll go with that one. So let's change this one to a 0. Change this one to a 0, and we'll just go with that one. Okay, so then we're working with one exposure. And this time of night, yeah, once that sun was diffused behind the cloud, and I think I mentioned it in the live stream, once the sun is diffused, it's much easier to get an even exposure, okay, because then the sun isn't quite as bright, the light's a bit flatter, so then we don't need to do exposure blending. So exposure blending, if you're shooting directly into a sunset, that's kind of when you need it. But because the sun was diffused behind all this cloud, we've got nice even light. and we've captured everything we want in one exposure. So that one, I don't even need to exposure blend. We can just work on one image. Jan, would you print them on a gloss or matte paper? With these, the way I look at it is if it's a very vibrant, bright, colorful image, I'll usually go a gloss paper. For the more pastel-y type colors, so more, you know, almost like this one would look nice on a matte paper because it's got that pastel-y, not so contrast. As soon as we start to get some contrast in it and lots of color, then I'll usually go a gloss. Personally, I don't use gloss. I use, it's called a satin paper or a semi-gloss. So it's kind of, it's the best of both. It's kind of, it's in between that matte and it's in between the gloss. There's also a metallic paper that can be nice with these sorts of images. Black and white's matte paper. Black and white's nearly always do on matte paper. But yeah, the more colorful and bright and vibrant the image is, especially greens and blues, you want a glossier paper. Okay, and that's personal preference. It's all personal preference with paper. But I find that, yeah, my go-to paper is the semi-gloss paper. I really like the semi-gloss luster type paper because it's the best of both. It's sort of got that nice shine to it, but it's still got the texture of a matte. So yeah, when it comes to paper, it is personal preference, but as a general rule, bright, vibrant images will look better on gloss. The more subtle colors, more pastel-y colors, even foggy, like a foggy forest, things like that will look really nice on a matte paper. But yeah, personal preference, really, it's one of those things that, and look, what I find with matte papers is, especially when you frame them, as soon as you put matte paper behind a glass frame, it kind of gives it that glossy look anyway. But your colors won't be as vibrant. Matte paper tends to soak in the ink a lot better, so generally they're not as vibrant in a matte paper. But yeah, look, it's one of those things that, yeah, as a general rule, bright, colorful images, gloss. Subtle, more subdued colors than the matte paper. Okay, so that's a single exposure, and again, that's basically a raw file. All I've done is the shadows and the highlights, and not much else. Now, this one here, this is the one that was our long exposure. Now, what I'm going to do is change the white balance on this. I might just reset it back to where it was, and in this case, because we're into blue hour, I like to cool my image down. Okay, I still want a little bit of that golden glow. It's a bit too purple for my liking. It's going to take a bit of purple out. So somewhere around about there. And again, I'm going to sync that to all of them, just so our white balance is the same. That's all right, no problems, Jan. Thanks for asking. It's good to have questions. So yeah, I do a fair bit of print. I love printing. I haven't done one for a while, but the first class I did a shoot to print class, and I can safely say that everyone walked away with some pretty impressive prints after that class. It was a sunrise session. It was one of the most epic sunrises we've ever had, and yeah, it was all done on that semi-gloss luster paper, and they looked really nice. Really, sunsets and sunrises on a luster paper, really nice. Okay, so this is the one where we've got 3 15-second exposures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend all 3 of these 15-second exposures, which will effectively create a 45-second exposure. Okay, so it's one of those. It's almost like it's almost like a hack. If you want to get that super long exposure, but you've got too much light, take several shots and then blend them all together. So for example, if you've got 30 shots at 1 second, if you blend them all together, you're effectively creating a 30-second exposure. Okay, it's not as good as having a 30-second exposure because you will see a little bit of variation in the water, but I'll show you. It'll be easy to show you. I'm going to select all 3 of these. I'm going to go to edit in Photoshop, and I'm going to open them as layers again. Okay, depending on how many images you've got, so if you've got 2 images, you want to blend them by 50%. If you've got 3 images, you want to blend them by about that 33%. 4 images, 25%, etc. Okay, so then each image is kind of blending in with the other. So for example, if I again, working with these layers, okay, it doesn't really matter which one's on top or which one's on bottom, because we're going to blend them all together. So with that top layer, if I take that opacity down to 33%, okay, now it's starting to show what's underneath. And then if I take that one underneath down to about 66%, okay, and let's go, there's our base image. So then we've blended a little bit there, and then we've blended a bit more. Okay, so see how it smooths out the water as we do all of them. Okay, so that's sort of how you create a fake 45-second exposure, 3 exposures at 15 seconds. Okay, and each one, as they stack on top of each other, they kind of fade into each other. Okay, so how's that for a pretty cool little hack? It's an old trick, it's been around for a while, but yeah, you get a really nice effect from it. Okay, and then all we need to do is go layer flatten image, and then actually what I'll do is I'll grab that sky while I'm here, and this time I'll actually bring our sky up just to make the blend a bit nicer. And again, this isn't a full workflow. There's I'm kind of rushing through it at the moment. There's lots of things that I would do. Another thing I have planned is to do a shoot to print session. So I'm going to go out and hopefully shoot something that I find worthy of a print. Oh, we've got a graphics driver update. Good timing. So yeah, I will eventually go out and shoot something and print it, and I'll show you the whole process, because yeah, for images that I print, I spend a lot more time on the image before I print it. Okay, things like dust spots, basically go over with a fine-tooth comb before I print an image. Do you print with borders? It depends. Generally, if they're just to go into a folder, then yes, I print them with borders. I very rarely do borderless unless people want a borderless print, then I'll print them borderless. But I tend to cut the paper. Okay, I've got roll paper, so I do print on a big, large format printer. So I'll print on the roll paper to size, and then I'll use my trimmer to trim it to size. When it comes to framing, I will leave a border. I'll leave a border on my framed prints because they just sit behind the matte board nicer. If you know, for example, if you've got a 4x6 print and you're trying to put it behind a 4x6 matte board, there's a very fine line where you can stick the paper onto the photo, if that makes sense. So the matte board, when the matte board sits on top of the photo, I just find having that little bit wider paper just makes it stick to the matte board a bit easier. Okay, so yeah, I'll cover that down the track, but generally, yes, I do print with borders. As a general rule, yes, I do print with borders. Borderless prints, you waste ink, you fill up your the maintenance cartridge, or the overflow cartridge tends to fill up quickly. So yeah, I do prefer to print with borders. But again, it really depends on where it's going. Okay. Now, okay, back to this one. This is our sky. So what I'm going to do now, I've got my foreground sorted. So now I'm going to blend in this sky. And again, this is why if you sort of repeat the process over and over, it becomes easy, and it sort of starts to make more sense the more you do it. So again, layer mask. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my gradient filter again, and I'm going to black out the bits that I don't want. So I don't want all this. I want what's underneath to come through. Okay, so with that top layer selected, I'm going to start with black, drag it up to white, and then it's going to black out the bottom half of that image to reveal what's underneath. Okay, so layer, flatten image. Okay, and that's it. Now I've blended all my photos. So I've gone through all of the ones that I liked anyway. Oh, we do have some more. Yeah, look, I might leave them for now. We're sort of running out of time. I sort of don't want, I want to try and keep the videos to about an hour. I just think, yeah, going more than an hour, yeah, look, I'd struggle to sit there for an hour watching someone edit and talk. So we'll try and limit it to an hour. Okay, so now we've got all our photos blended. So now we can actually start editing them. And what we'll do is I'm just going to show you a couple of very easy and we're going to make them dramatic. Okay, that's the purpose of this video. We do want to make them dramatic. So as you can see from that, it's a fairly flat image. Okay, not a lot of color in the sky. First thing I'm going to do is straighten that horizon, because that is really annoying me that my horizon wasn't straight. I normally shoot with my little level on, but yeah, it's just one of those things. I thought I was lining everything up properly. Okay, so nice straight horizon to start with. Now, when I'm working in Photoshop, I like to create a copy. Okay, so Control and J will create a copy. And then if we go up to the filter and we go to the Camera Raw filter, so this one here, this essentially, it opens it in Adobe Camera Raw. Okay, now to get a dramatic, and now we're kind of like back into the Lightroom part of Photoshop. So this bit should look familiar for the Lightroom users. This is Camera Raw, so this has got all our exposures and shadows, highlights, all those sliders. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start on our sky. So very similar to Lightroom, we're going to go up to our masking filters. We're going to grab a linear gradient. We're just going to bring the exposure down a little bit. I might bring the highlights down a little bit more, and then just grab and drag that. So yeah, Lightroom users will be familiar with the gradient tool. Okay, so we're just darkening the sky. Okay, so just sort of getting it, yeah, drama usually means darker. Okay, so we're just going to darken down the sky a little bit. Now what I'm going to do as well, I'm going to create another mask, and what we're going, actually no, let's stick with that mask for now. Let's stick with that mask. A good way of getting some drama into your picture, if we go down to our effects and just bump up the dehaze. Okay, now I'll overdo it just so you can see. If we go too far, we start to bring in too much color. But yeah, the dehaze will sort of really make all that cloud stand out a bit better. Okay, if we just bring that down further and get it even more into the sky. Okay, so just by using that dehaze, as you can see, you know, you can go overboard, of course. Just bring it up subtly, just enough. Yeah, I sort of don't like to push these past 10 to 15. And even a bit of clarity will bring in some drama as well. Okay, another thing we might do is we're going to create another mask, because I think it was it Jan that said about adding some more orange into the sky, some more yellow. If we just grab a brush tool, what I'm going to do is go down to my temperature slider and just lift the temperature. Okay, let's take it up to 50 for starters, add some magenta in there as well, and we're just going to paint in that bit of the sky. Okay, so that's an easy way of doing it, not really effective, but an easy way of doing it. And then we can just sort of dial it back. Okay, so we can bring it back a little bit. So somewhere around about there. Actually, you know what we'll do? Well, let's overcook it, because I know what the YouTube compression's like. If I don't sort of do too much, you're not going to notice it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to overcook it. I'm going to really make it orange. We're going to create another brush. I'm going to bring some blue back into that sky. So I've just created another brush, and this time I'm going to add some blue. Get some blue up there. Okay, and then I'm just going to press OK. And now that we've got this into Photoshop, and this is why I make a copy, because we've got a copy, there's our original image underneath, and there's our edited one that we've just put some drama into the sky. Okay, so as you can see, well, I don't know how well you'll see it with the YouTube. It might actually look pretty good on YouTube because of the compression, but to me it's overdone. And the great thing about layers is if we just turn down the opacity a little bit, okay, then we can kind of get a nicer blend. Okay, so then we're just bringing a little bit of that color into the sky, a little bit of that drama. Okay, and just making it look a little bit nicer. Okay, and then if we go to layer flatten image, okay, another thing I'd like to do with this image is bring out some more of this water. So this is where the dodging and burning comes in. So what I want to do is get some more. For those that remember, I bring down my whites and lift my blacks. That's just so I can see what I've got in my shadow and in our shadows and highlights. Okay, so now what I want to do, because I've brought them down and flattened the image, I'm going to bring some white back into this water. Okay, so this is why I bring down my whites, because later I bring it back in. And what I'm going to do is, if we go down to our filters down the bottom, or our adjustment layers, and I'm going to select a levels adjustment, and then you'll see this little histogram appear. So over to the right is our brights, and over to the left is our blacks. Okay, so I'm just checking at this stage I do have a black point because the histogram's all the way into the black, and I do have a white point. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my whites in even more, and all I'm looking at is the water at this stage. I don't care about what the sky is doing, I'm just looking at the water, and I'm going to bring it up until it starts to blow out. Okay, and this is one of those things that you probably need to calibrate your monitor to be able to see when you're blowing your highlights just by eyeballing it. But for an example, I'm just going to take it up to about there. I'll overdo it so it looks better in the image. Okay, so every time you use one of these adjustments, any sort of adjustment down here will automatically create a layer mask. Now what I want to do is I want to black out what I've done because it's too much. So if I press Control and I, that'll invert that mask to black. So now it's blacked out that levels adjustment that I've done. So now with a white brush, I'm going to grab my brush tool, I'm going to grab a white brush, I'm going to turn my opacity down to about 20%, and I'm just going to start painting in some of that white. Okay, so now I'm bringing in, so I'm basically, can't remember whether it's dodging or dodging, I'm bringing in some white into those just specific areas. So I'm not touching the sky, I'm not bringing extra brightness into the sky, I'm just painting in little bits that I want. And then if we look at our before and after, okay, so now we've added some white back into just the areas we want to add it into. Okay, so that's why, yeah, when it comes to those white and black sliders, that's the method in my madness. Rather than just increasing the white and blacks globally, I bring in the whites where I want the white, and then I'll bring in black where I want the black. Okay, just like the old school dodging and burning. Okay, so hopefully you can see that on YouTube. I know YouTube does compress it a fair bit. Let's go up to 100%, just for the sake of this video. Let's really make that very white. Okay, so again, I'm just painting the whitewash. I'm leaving the rocks as they are. I'm leaving the sky as it is. Okay, and then we've just made all that whitewash, actual whitewash. Okay, so another really powerful tool with layers and masking. You can just bring in the bits that you want. Okay, and then another way of doing some drama, and Pam will remember this one if Pam's still in there. What we're going to do is, I don't know why I just did that. I do things sometimes and I don't know why I'm doing them. What we're going to do, go back down to our adjustments again, and this time we're going to grab a curves adjustment. And with the curves adjustment, you've probably heard of the S-curve. Everyone tends to do the S-curve. I can't stand the S-curve. I don't use it. Okay, the way I use my curves is if you grab it in the middle and drag it down, it'll make everything darker. Grab it in the middle, it'll make everything go up and it'll make everything brighter. Okay, so drama, what we want to do is we want to bring it down, and I'm going to overcook it. So bring that down, and what it's doing is leaving my black point exactly where it is, and it's leaving my white point exactly where it is, and it's just bringing all the mid-tones down. Okay, so my whites are still white, my blacks are still black. It's just making everything a little bit darker. Okay, so I'm going to overcook it, and then again with a brush. And yeah, I suggest when you first get into Photoshop, play around with layers and masking, and just practice with your brush tool and your black and white brush. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to black out the bits that I don't want to affect. So with a black brush, I'm just going to black out the bit in the middle, which is going to give us our original. And all I've done is really darken the edges. So I've added a vignette, and straight away that's sort of a quick and easy way of adding some drama. So if we just zoom, I always like to zoom out and get a better look. Okay, so just by adding that fake vignette, we've kind of added some drama to it. Okay, and again, you know, burning back in some of that darkness. Okay, and then if I go back to my white brush and I want the sky a bit darker, I can just paint the sky in. Okay, I want to darken down this corner a little bit more, I can just paint it on that mask. Okay, and then if we find that we've gone too far, just turn our opacity down. Okay, so that's with nothing, and then just slowly start to increase it until we get it sort of roughly where we want it. Okay, so that's just a quick and easy way of getting some color, some contrast, and a bit of drama into the image. Okay, and then again we can just go to layer and flatten image, and then if we save that, it'll now save that adjustment into Lightroom. Okay, we've hit the hour. Now there was one other thing I was going to do. Again, what I'll do, I will break these down into smaller videos as well. So yeah, everything that you see in here, I will slow it all down and do it a bit more step by step. Let's go to this one, because this one's already pretty dramatic. This one. Okay, so well, this one's very dark as it is already. So again, let's just go back to those levels, bring up the levels. So again, I'm just looking at the water at this stage. Control and invert will make that mask black, so it's blacked out all that adjustment that I've done. And again, with a white brush this time, we're just going to paint in all those bits of white, and we'll get that wave in the background as well. I'm doing this very roughly. Don't sort of get in the comments and say it doesn't look very realistic, because no, it doesn't look realistic. This is all just to show you how these brushes work. Okay, and then again you can just tone it down. Okay, so and then just slowly increase it to your desired effect. Okay, and in that case probably somewhere around about there. So now we've brightened up and added some of that white back in there. Okay, and then as a last little trick, so again thank you to everyone who's here. Yeah, still this is all new to me, these live streams, so I'll get into a bit more of a routine and try and make things flow a bit more efficiently. I might even, yeah, now that I'm kind of almost doing too much. Okay, so what I might do in the future is I might just pick out some of my favorite images, rather than go through all of them and try and get them all done quickly. I might just pick out some of my favorite ones and sort of play around with them. Okay, now this one here, it feels very flat. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control and J, and then down here we've got all these blending modes, and I find that the soft light adds some really nice contrast. Okay, so as you can see, that's a very quick and easy way of adding a bucket load of contrast. That was bucket with a B. Heaps of contrast, and again with that opacity slider, just kind of dial it back to where you want it. Okay, so somewhere for the sake of YouTube, I'll just kind of overdo it a little bit and flatten image. Okay, and again, Control J, that's one thing you'll get used to very quick. Control J is copy. I don't know where the J comes into it. Yeah, most of them, you know, B is for brush, E is for eraser, T is for transform. I don't know where J comes from. I don't know how they come up with J as a copy. Duplicate, there we go, duplicate. Yeah, good English. Yeah, I don't know where they've come up with the J, but yeah, Control and J will copy that layer, make another layer. Okay, and then again, if we go up to this filter, Camera Raw filter, and then we're back in our Adobe Camera Raw. Okay, and then if we want to add color, then we can boost our vibrance. And the good thing is when you create a copy, let's overcook this. All right, and if I don't want this blue in the water, if I go to my color mixer, this is another thing I haven't covered yet, but if I go to my color mixer, go to saturation, and just bring down the blues, I can take all that blue out of the water. Okay, so it's not quite so in your face. Okay, or if I want to just bring in the yellows, so again, I think Jan was saying before about the yellows, this color mixer, if you want to just bring up the oranges, it will just target specific colors. Okay, so you've got saturation, you've got luminance. Luminance will bring up the brightness of it. Okay, so if you want it darker or brighter, luminance will increase the brightness or the darkness. So same with the blues, like we target those blues and it kind of brings up just the water as well. And hue, yeah, don't play with hue because that will just completely throw off the color of everything. Okay, it'll yeah, it changes the color of everything. So that's, yeah, cover that in another video. I don't like that one very much. Okay, so once again, look, I've overcooked it, but we can just use this opacity slope. If we go all the way down and then just slowly start to bump it up to where we want it. Okay, and then it's just starting to bring in a bit more of that orange. Okay, so very over processed, but that's the whole purpose of this video, just to show you what you can do. Okay, so to me that's very over processed. But if I'll show you this cool little trick. If we go back to Lightroom, and I probably can't do it now, but if we reopen that, I'm going to edit that in Photoshop. So we're going back and grabbing our original photo. Probably should have done this before I cropped it. But yeah, if we go back and grab that original photo, did it open up? No. Where is it? Oh, I've already gotten rid of it. But yeah, if you get to that stage where you've over processed it, what you do is you go back and grab the original photo and again create a layer, stack that layer on top. If we just, I'll just pretend this is our original photo because I don't want to go looking for it. Get this kind of back to where it was. Take all that horrible color out of it. Okay, so let's just say that was our original photo. Again, we just sort of blend our original photo with our overcooked one, and just find that balance of back to, you know, where you started compared to where you've ended up. Okay, so if you want a more natural look, yeah, just go back, grab your original photo, bring that into Photoshop, and blend it back. Okay, so according to Mr. Google, Control J stands for justify. Okay, so justify. How do you justify that as a copy? But yeah, there you go. Mr. Google says J stands for justify. So yeah, that's one of those. There's certain tools in Photoshop you'll use a lot. Control J to copy, B for brush, T for transform. There's certain tools that you'll use a lot. So on that note, I think we might wind it up there. I think I've gone long enough. The main bit I wanted to cover was that exposure blending, and adding some white back into our water. Okay, so there's so much more we can do. But yeah, more of a follow-up to show you the photos that I got while I was out live. Okay, so, you know, probably not the greatest photos I've ever taken, but, you know, for what we had, they're not too bad. Okay, they're not too bad. We had some fun out there, and that's what it's all about. Get out there, have fun, practice, experiment, and you can walk away with some surprisingly nice photos. Okay, what was a command you found that brings up the shortcuts? Okay, so yes, if we go into Lightroom, in Lightroom, if you press Control and question mark, that brings up all your shortcuts. So Control and question mark for shortcuts. Okay, so that's a good one. A lot of these translate to Photoshop as well. So Lightroom and Photoshop, kind of the same thing. And you'll probably find if we have, is there Control and J in here? Yeah, so you can't really copy photos in Lightroom. Lightroom is a bit more, it's just your camera raw. But yeah, a lot of those shortcuts will work. I don't know if that, let's try Control J in here. No, doesn't do anything. Did it do anything? Auto select? No, it just copies. Okay, so yeah, Lightroom and Photoshop do have slightly different shortcuts. But yeah, look, they're one of those things. They're pretty easy to look up. I'll kind of mention most of them as I go through. I'll, you know, Control J to copy and Control T to transform. So I might finish it there. So yes, thank you for everyone. Thanks Ultimate, thanks Leslie, Knots, Jan, thank you, and welcome. We have some really nice people in here, so yeah, they're a good stream, good bunch of people that we have. Who else? Pam, thank you, Claudia. So yeah, thank you to everyone who popped in and said hello. And yeah, look, like I said, still we're in the trial stage. We'll tighten the screws and get to the point a bit more regularly as we go forward. So thank you, and again, if anything you want to see, put it in the comments, send me a message. If there's something you want to see, let me know. Always looking for ideas for videos. And I'm going to keep doing a lot of my simple and effective videos going forward rather than these longer streams. These are more just so I can chat with everyone. So yes, thank you again. And on that note, I will leave you all and hopefully see some of you again soon. So thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.